What is the future of the whiskey industry? What are some of his favorite bottles? And how did he get started on his journey? Today, I will be picking the brain of Billy Abbott, who is the Whisky Exchange's brand ambassador. I'm Jeff. This is G Whiskey. Stick around. All right, so not long ago, I had the pleasure of sitting down and having a video chat with the Whisky Exchange brand ambassador, Billy Abbott. And beyond just brand ambassador, the man is also a very enthusiastic whiskey fan. I can tell you that much. He's also a blogger, he's an author, he's a public speaker. He does it all. And I thought it would be really fun to ask him some questions, not just about him, but also some big picture stuff about the whiskey industry. And if possible, maybe an insider scoop or two. Thankfully, he agreed. He and I had a great talk, and we'll be going over some of the highlights of our conversation. So stay tuned for that. Let's jump into it. In the meantime, if you'll kindly leave a like down below, that'd be greatly appreciated. Okay, welcome guys. I'm here with Billy Abbott, who is the brand ambassador for the Whisky Exchange. So right out the gate, Billy, thank you for joining me.
Cool. Well, thank you very much for having me.
So the first question is something I think a lot of my viewers already know, but I think just briefly we can go over the Whisky Exchange, who they are, what they do, and just cover some basics there.
Yeah, sure. So, Whisky Exchange, we are, I need to get the words very right on this one, the world's largest online specialist spirits retailer. Get any of those out the way, all of a sudden there's somebody else who might beat us. But when it comes to selling, sort of like specializing in selling spirits, we're the biggest online folks in the world. Specializing in whiskey, as the name, the Whisky Exchange. We do a bit of everything. We do lots of old and rare whiskey, as well as just all the new stuff. We have pretty much everything. But yeah, we ship around the world, and we bottle stuff ourselves, as well as selling everything we can find.
All right, so next question. This one's kind of a fun one. This one's a little bit more personal. Can you tell me what the day in the life of a Whisky Exchange brand ambassador is like? So what's your day to day?
It's a bit of a weird one because being an ambassador for a shop isn't really a thing. I'm not a brand. I'm telling people about the things that we sell rather than us ourselves. But, most of the time, I'm just telling people about the world of spirits and about great drinks, because one of the things we want to do is we don't want people just to, come to us and buy stuff. We want people to come back and trust us to help them find great things to taste. We're all about finding the right thing for the right person. So yeah, but my day-to-day is pretty much either sitting at my desk or running around telling people about booze, which is a strange thing to admit is my job, but I enjoy talking, as you can tell, and as long as I can do that either by typing or by using my mouth, I'm happy.
All right, next question. Something that would surprise us about working in whiskey retail, so something that might not occur to the average consumer that is part of your life.
Spreadsheets, a lot of spreadsheets. It's just lots of logistics behind the scenes. It's a thing that people don't normally think about. It's just all these annoying logistical things hiding in the background. But without them, we wouldn't be as good as what we do, and we wouldn't be able to tell everybody as much about the drinks they want to drink as we can.
Fair enough. All right, so we'll move on to the next question. This is a little bit of a juicy one. Are you allowed to discuss some products that you sell on your site that you're not a particularly big fan of?
I very much do not hide the fact that I'm not a big fan of absolutely everything we sell. Not everything is to my taste. We generally don't sell things which are bad, but not everything's for me. Speaking to my boss the other day, we got a brand new Lefroy just came in, and it's like, this is a bit of a beast. I quite like it. And she went, nah, just not for me. I just don't like Lefroy. Different people, different things. So yeah, I can discuss things I don't like. Don't generally tell people I do like them. So yeah, be honest about it. There's something for everybody, but not everything for everybody. You see what I mean?
Do teams, this is one I want you to answer honestly, okay? This is a very hard-hitting question. Do teams from the Whisky Exchange and Master of Malt throw eggs at each other's offices?
I don't. Who? Masters of Malt?
Getting into something a little bit more serious here. There's some discourse with regards to the industry in general slowing down. That's not specifically with regards to single malts, but just alcohol sales in general. Can you speak to that at all, or do you have any insight into what's going on?
Certain parts of the industry are slowing down. Certain parts are speeding up. Tequila and mezcal seems to be booming in the US and starting to boom in Europe. But we are like, I think 1% of tequila and mezcal sales in Europe. So it may be booming over here, but that's not really hitting the bottom line of the folks over in Mexico. Rum's doing well. Single malt whiskey is softening a little bit, but some brands are doing better than others. So the industry shifts around and has done in cycles for decades, if not centuries. Yeah, again, this is the whole drinks industry. It's not a fun time for everybody. If you look at the levels of production we see across Scotland and Ireland and in other places around the world, people are stopping production. People are saying we're cutting production down. But there's other people who are doubling down. I think it was most of the whiskey companies up in Scotland have not hit profit targets this year, apart from William Grant's, who smashed it out the park. So it's yeah, but generally it's not a great time at the moment. But we still have great things to drink, and just make sure that we can continue putting those things out to people.
Building off of that a little bit, are there any trends that are happening right now within the spirits industry or particularly within the whiskey industry that might be of interest to some viewers?
But it's very much people are being more open. The big thing that I've been saying for a few years now is we talk about world whiskey, and that's not even really a thing anymore. Whiskey just is made around the world. All whiskey is world whiskey. The barriers between the old traditional countries, the Scotland, the Ireland, USA, Canada, bit of Japan coming in now. That's considered one of the old school ones. India is increasingly becoming an old school country. Taiwan's an old country now when it comes to making whiskey. Yeah, Kablan, we all know about those guys. Yeah, but people are looking to places like the Nordics. So Denmark, Norway, Sweden, Finland, ridiculous things coming out of there. Mainland Europe is building slowly but surely. They've been making whiskey in Spain for decades. Generally, it's been terrible, but increasingly we're now seeing more and more interesting things coming out of these countries which haven't been known for making whiskey before. You know, in Japan, there's a whole new wave coming through now, some of which might even actually be affordable. Australia and New Zealand, incredible whiskies coming out of there. We've got whiskey coming out of Mexico. And then we have things like American single malt, which has now finally been given a definition. We're seeing these new things emerge, people trying new things. And that is the big trend we see, is that people are being more adventurous.
Do you think a time will come when the old legacy countries that are making whiskey, things like Scotland or Japan or America, do you think there will be a time where they're no longer considered the default and they're just kind of part of the broader scope of whiskey production?
So I can see it happening, but it's a slow thing, because when it comes to whiskey, Scotland, Ireland, America, Canada, to a lesser extent over here in the EU, in Europe, I don't think that's going to change anytime soon. They're the old fashioned places. It's like vodka. Vodka is made everywhere in the world. Literally anywhere where you can get a still and some grain, someone's making vodka. But people still think of Russian vodka, Polish vodka, Ukrainian vodka. The Eastern European, the Balkan regions. Those are the places where vodka comes from, even into the Nordics. That is the heartland. They haven't been the heartland of vodka for decades, and so I think we'll have that, but we'll have that acceptance of these whiskies coming from everywhere else, building over time.
Okay. Moving on to something a little bit different. I'm going to start asking you about some of your preferences, if you don't mind. And my first question here is, what is your go-to budget pour? So let's try and keep it, let's say, under, I don't know, 50, 60 pounds.
Generally, if I'm going for budget stuff, I will go for non-peated things, and the stuff I generally like is the most boring whiskey possible. I love refill casks. I like refill bourbon. And so for just standard branded stuff, Glen Murray is a great go-to. As soon as their stuff hits 43, it gets good. Above 46%, it's even better. It's a whiskey that appears in the supermarket, watered down, and it's fine, but it doesn't really sing until it has that little bit of extra intensity, extra strength. Then big fan. So if you can find the any of the Glen Murray sort of bourbon cast things around that sort of price, it's good. But at the moment, and this is the thing I really shouldn't tell people because I like buying them and we'll sell out faster, are the Signatory 100 proof range. At the moment, they're going for about 40 to 70 pounds, but most of them are around sort of 40, 50, the ones I look at. And they are 100 proof, sherry or bourbon casks. They are small batches, and they're from everything from well-known distilleries. They keep on doing Speyside M's, which I avoid because I don't want something really big and sherried. But I got a Glenord the other day, which cost me £48.50, I think it was, for a 12-year-old, 10-year-old, 11-year-old, 12-year-old bourbon cask Ord. And it's just absolutely excellent everyday drinking whiskey. I do not have that bottle anymore. It is very much empty. And looking around at the Indies is the place I go for for finding those sort of like not necessarily budget, but that step up. You know, budget. I used to go for Glenmurray. The Glenmurray Classic is a great sort of just like, for me, experimental whiskey. If I wanted to do things like fill a cask or try to turn whiskey into a cocktail or do some infusing, Glenmurray Classic was a great whiskey, which I knew the flavour of. It tasted good. I could tinker with it, and it wasn't so expensive that I'd be upset if it went wrong. So, but let's say up to that 40, £50 mark, Century 100 proof range is absolutely killing it at the moment in a way that's actively upsetting. It does remind me I need to go and have a check to make sure we haven't sold out the one which I wanted to buy today. So thanks.
Now, if we move up a little bit in price, I'm going to ask you what your go-to premium pour is. So let's make it 75 pounds and up. What's a good premium pour? What are some things that you would suggest?
Again, I lean very much into the boring space side when I can do. Sometimes with a bit more sherry. When you get that a little bit more age, you start losing some of that massive over-the-top sherry punch. Years ago, I loved Abel Arabuna. It was my number one whiskey. Bought every batch back in the days when it was affordable. But that over-the-top sherry is not really my thing anymore. So I want something a little bit more mellowed. Weirdly, Whisky Exchange is part of the Pernod Ricard group these days. But I do like older Glenlivets and have done it even before we got into that sort of stage. So if you find Glenlivet 18 used to be one of my go-tos. The price has gone up, still reasonably priced. And other thing I generally sort of go for is Ben Romach, I think, is another distillery which doesn't get the love I think it deserves. No, when it comes to that sort of level, that really is individual bottles. I don't have a go-to. It's just every now and again something will pop up and I'll go, right, I'm having that.
So next question, what is your current favorite distillery?
My favorite distillery is not a Scottish distillery. I have to jump outside into my wonderful, beautiful native country of England. English whiskey is on the rise and is starting to get really, really interesting. I've been keeping an eye on it since before I started working at the Whisky Exchange. And my current favorite distillery is White Peak in Derbyshire. It's UK whiskey, it's English whiskey, so it's Wireworks you might have heard of, but they're doing really interesting experiments there. Their whiskey, they've now hit a point where they're confident enough to release just bourbon casks, so not playing around with STRs or wine casks and that. Their spirit and their maturation has come together to such a point. It's like, here we go, here is a naked bourbon cask. This is what our whiskey is like underneath the various different other layers. It's interesting. They've got a slight peat in there. They use a yeast that's cropped off a beer, so some hoppiness, but doesn't come through. They play, they experiment, and the folks there are lovely as well. So yeah, very much my favorite distillery at the moment.
All right, next up, I want to ask you about brands that you really like that are not celebrated as much as you think they should be. So something that's got wide distribution that should be much more popular.
Up in Scotland, the big one for me is Glencadam. Big fan of theirs, have been since they were taken over and started releasing new bits and pieces. They never seem to sort of break out of the whiskey geek market. And even within the whiskey geek market, they don't get loads of love. And I think alongside them, Tamdu, another company, another distillery that was bought and it's been slowly ticking up in the expectation. But, going down Glencadam, I'm not a big fan of their wine casks and everything like that, but when you do their bourbon casks and their sort of sympathetic maturations, lovely things. And Tam do the exact opposite. When they start playing around with good sherry, yeah, they make fantastic things. And those two definitely.
All right, finally, let's move on to a game called This or That. So I might give you a bottle or I might give you a distillery, and you can choose your preference from the two and maybe just really quickly tell us why that's what you went for. So we'll start with a couple bottles, some peated sherried whiskeys. So let's go with Lefroy 10 Sherry versus Kilchoman Sineg. What's your pick?
That's a very hard one. I'm a Lefroy collector, by which I mean I buy more than I drink. But Kilchoman is one of my favourite distilleries on Islay to visit. I'll probably go Lefroy PX. Lefroy Sherry. Very much. I love Lefroy's medicinal thing, especially when it mixes with the sherry. The Sineg is absolutely solid when it comes to an ongoing release, which has got that sherried edge. Unfortunately, Lefroy is very much my one true love from Islay, apart from all the others.
Apart from all the others, right? Okay, so keeping it on Islay then, we're going to broaden it to just distillery. You got to pick one. The other's got to go. Bunnahabhain or Bruichladdich?
I'm very sorry, Bruichladdich. Much as I love you all, they're some of my favourite people who I've ever worked with in the industry at Bruichladdich. I love the folks. I just don't get on with their whiskey anywhere near as well as I get with Bunnahabhain. The smoky Bunnahabhains we've had more recently, Big fan of those. As long as they keep the sherry calmed. They do love a little bit too much sherry from Bunner for me. But Bruichladdich, the regular Bruichladdich whiskey is just not for me a lot of the time. Never really been a fan. That creamy character gets a bit too much for me. Port Charlotte, big fan. Optimal, stunt whiskey. I've tried some great things from them, but yeah, sorry, Bunner.
All right, let's move on to the mainland. Let's talk about, well, we got Campbelltown and we got Speyside here. Ben Romick cast strength versus Glen Scotia Victoriana.
That depends on the batch and the day of the week. Victoriana and Benrama Cask Strength are two whiskies which really, really batchy, and from, each time they're made can be different. We had Glen Scotia Victoriana pop up in our Whisky of the Year competition this year, and it came dead last out of the 6 whiskies. Still great, but was very much the bottom of the range that we did that night. Excuse me. I love Victoriana normally, but it just didn't show well, and it's just literally from batch to batch. I still quite happily drink it, but Benroma Cask Strength, back in the ancient times, the first sort of few editions, I absolutely loved it. Then it's dipped, it's got up and down. It's always good, but again, that's why I can't choose between them, because it really just depends on the batch, and also just literally the day of the week, because they're so close often. It's just how you're feeling at the time.
Next up, we've got Highland Park cast strength versus Ardnamurchan cast strength.
Oh dear me, that's two different sides of a coin. Probably the Ardnamurchan. They're a little bit more intensity, that little bit of extra youth. The Highland Park cast strengths have been great, but I am very much a fan of Ardnamurchan at the moment. They've been doing some amazing bits and pieces, and yeah, very much at the moment I'd jump on that.
Oban 14 versus Kleinlich 14. Which one are you going for?
Kleinlich 14 every day. Oban's great, and I really love Oban, and I know you like Oban, but Kleinlich, for years, if someone said, "What's your favourite distillery?" I will generally say, if I don't know them, I'll generally say Kleinlich. Now, Kleinlich, very much massive place in my heart. Oban, I visited a few times, love their whiskies, loads of great stuff from there, but now, unfortunately, Kleinlich, as one of my favourite distilleries of all time, has to take that one.
All right, this last one, not scripted. I didn't send you this one in advance. So just off the cuff, Aaron 10 or Craigellachie 13?
Oh man, that's a difficult one. It'll be Craigellachie in the end. Aaron was my first favourite distillery, but Craigellachie, I went from absolutely hating it back when I first started to now the 13 is very much a go-to. When we do our Whisky of the Year, there are certain whiskies I always nominate. I nominate Glenmorangie 18, Craigellachie 13, and Glencadam, I can't remember which one is 15. I can't remember which one it is. But those 3 distilleries I always nominate one of those. And I think everything now, apart from Craigellachie, has now been in our competition. But yeah, really, the character of it is so different to everything else out there. Yeah, Craigellachie.
So you guys sent me some samples very generously. Thank you. And the series is entitled, what? The Seasons Winter. Now, this is something that's new to me. I've never tried them before. You sent me 3 samples, and I've chosen my favorite that we can maybe discuss really quickly today. And this one is an Orkney 10-year-old from 2013. So can you tell us a little bit about this one?
Yeah, so firstly, the range itself. This year we decided we do loads of bottlings of our own that we're an independent bottler as well as a shop. And so we decided to put together 3 at a time, 4 ranges, which show off the flavors of the season. So this is the season's winter, and you can tell by the color of all of them that they are all somewhat on the sherried side. And so we want big, rich sherried whiskies that really sort of show off the season. So we have the Orkney, which is not from Scapa. Of course, we can't tell you possibly which distillery it is from, Highland Park. We have a Blair Athol, and we have a Lefroy. The Blair Athol was big, rich, and fruity. The Lefroy is an absolute monster. It's 66%. It's basically smacks you around the face to make sure you know you've drunk it. But the Highland Park, for me, is the one that sort of sits in the middle between them and sort of shows off very much a classic sort of Highland Park character. So all the labels have pictures of what sort of flavors you should expect from them. Our head buyer tried all the samples, put these together, and our in-house design team made these very pretty labels. I know you're a fan of proper information on the label. I made a big list of the things that had to be on the label. They kept most of them on the list. So distilled 24th of September 2013, bottled 24th of November 2023. It's from a hogshead. I'll let you guess what sort of hogshead. But yeah, it's Highland Park 10, But for me, if you're sorry, it's Orkney Distillery 10. But if you've tried those old, as we doing the hand actions, the slopey shouldered bottle or the flat shouldered Highland Park 12-year-olds from back in the day, that's the character I get from that. Highland Park's sherry forward character has really dropped off for me over the years, especially at the 12-year-old level. It's still a fine whiskey, but it's not for me up to what I was after back in those, from that expression back in the day. And this reminds me a lot more of that, a lot more sherry, but still has that little wisp of smoke, that sort of chocolatey edge you get from Highland Park, what I always get from Highland Park. And at 57%, it has that intensity in there as well.
Yeah, I mean, these genuinely, like, I'm not, again, off the books, genuinely, these are all fantastic. All three of them are really, really good.
We're really pleased. This is the reason why we're sort of sitting there saying, Jeff doesn't necessarily want to talk about sort of like specific products or anything, but it's like, yeah, screw it, just send him some because they're good. Let's say the Highland Park for me is the one which just reminds me of what I want Highland Park to be.
Yeah, so, yeah. I think that's pretty much it. I mean, it's just everything you would want from a Highland Park. It really is fantastic.
Yeah, I'm very, very pleased.
All right, that I guess brings us to the end of my questions. Billy, thank you very much for joining us today. I appreciate it. Thank you to the team at the Whisky Exchange for sending these over. And I appreciate you taking a little bit of time out of your day to join us.
No, well, thank you very much for getting me away from some spreadsheets and the printing out of many labels to fill many, many tiny sample bottles. Thank you very much for saving me from that horrible fate.
All right, that was the video, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. Huge thank you to Billy for participating. This was my first foray into conducting interviews. Definitely some work to be done on that, but Billy was wonderfully patient, and again, thank you. And lastly, of course, I got to thank you guys, especially the channel members and all the patrons, everyone who contributes to the channel. Massive thank you. If you want to help out, I've got Patreon and PayPal linked down below. Anything and everything helps. And I guess we will see you in the next video. Bye, guys.